Welcome to our YouTube channel and our session today on from Spire Selling .com. I have a very special guest, Martin Leitner, who I'm gonna introduce. Martin and I got to know each other about a year ago, and Martin currently runs a company that helps people like myself to publish books and build their messaging, marketing, and everything they have to offer, including the courses that they sell. So Martin and I were a perfect fit. It was kind of serendipitous that Martin and I met. Um, I'll briefly tell you a little bit about Martin's background, and Martin, fill in some of the blanks if I miss something. But Martin has a very interesting background. He's Austrian, has worked in C-suite positions with various companies, including Zurich Insurance, Farmers Insurance, and has a great insight and vantage point, having worked with large organizations globally. And then developed a passion for books, which I'm going to ask Martin to explain more about because it's a fascinating story. So very excited about today's session. This is a live conversation on YouTube. So I'm going to ask everybody, please, we're really interested in your feedback and your comments. Please subscribe below. That really helps us as well. And we're looking forward to your comments and feedback. So, Martin, welcome. Looking forward to
Yeah,
our next hour.
Rob, thank you. It's I'm so excited to be on your show here. I can't tell you. So when we met a year ago, and you told me, you want to write a book about B2B sales, and I just thought, um, I know everything about B2B sales, right? I have been in the industry, so to speak, for decades. I used to be in the corporate world as a buyer, right? I was in technology in large Fortune 500 companies, and we would buy millions of dollars from B2B salespeople. But I was also in B2B sales myself. 20 years ago, I was in technology. You didn't mention that. I was with Cognizant, one of the very big IT companies that grew like exponentially in the early 2000s. I was a part of that growth, and I was a practice leader, and I also did sales. I did a lot of sales. So I just thought I know everything about it, but you totally opened my eyes to a new world of B2B sales. And it's really exciting to be a part of this journey, and exciting to publish this book for you, because I really have learned so much. And I remember you told me on the first call, Martin, I want to write a book about the transformation of B2B salespeople to sales practitioners. And I had no clue what you were talking about back then. So why don't you tell us a little bit, what do you mean by that?
So from salesperson to sales practitioner, yeah, this has been a body of work that's been developing for a long time. Um, so in my background for the last 34 years, I've been running a sales development organization that specifically
Right.
worked with sales companies to develop their people, their managers, and their culture at large.
Yeah.
So that came along quite nicely, and every company has their own story, but every company nicely wanted to develop their skills, etc. But what became very evident in the last few years, and I'm sure everybody can relate to this, we've had a lot of changes, like significant changes, kind of alarming changes, where companies are all of a sudden struggling with sales and what their
Right.
salespeople are
Right.
supposed to be doing. And so the traditional salesperson has evolved, but nothing like the last 3 4 years. They've become something entirely better, something entirely different, And that's what I've spent a few years now trying to capture that. It's very obvious once you put your finger on it, this sales practitioner mindset, because they already exist. So that's what the book is about, and the courses as well that we're inviting people to look into.
Yeah,
What
and
is
I
a
must
sales
say it's
practitioner?
really fascinating what I learned just in this last year from working with you on this book. It opened a totally new perspective of B2B sales to me. I want to be a B2B salesperson now, just reading this book. But there's also another connection that we have that I want to talk about, and that is, as you said, I grew up in Austria. I actually grew up on a mountain in the Alps, right? In a tiny little village that was, clustered around a church, and from my bedroom window, I had a view of a glacier, right? So I'm familiar with mountains. My parents dragged me up mountains on ropes when I was a kid, but I learned that you're actually a really hardcore mountaineer, but you didn't start climbing mountains until your 20s. And that was one of the first stories that you told me about that I just find really amazing. And it's in the book too, right? So share with us your story about your first mountain climb and what that led to. I just think that's great.
Well, yeah, I'd love to, and it's uh, the reason it's relevant is because I was in sales at the time. I was working for Xerox. I started working there in my early 20s after a short stint in engineering, and I figured I had to round myself out. So I managed to get a job at Xerox, and
Right.
I wanted to go into sales specifically because I was shy, and I actually had I was wrestling with who am I, and what am I supposed to be, and boy oh boy, being in sales really brings that out, because you're getting hammered every day by customers and
Yeah.
objections and
Yeah.
difficult problems and all that. And I don't know about everybody else in the audience as a salesperson, but you're really forced into looking inside for your own development, because you've got to find this in yourself. And to me, uh, some people go into various different activities, sports, whatever. For me, it was mountains. I was already rock climbing, and rock climbing is it touches a part of you. It touches a nerve inside you as you're doing it. That
Yeah.
speaks into, can I do this? Should I do this? What is the next move? Um, it's very intense. It's very focused. So it drives you into yourself and your mind, and how your mind is functioning. And so that turned into uh, I convinced a buddy of mine to go out west and climb a mountain. So the very first mountain, to answer your question, that we climbed, believe it or not, stupid decision, but like the very first mountain we climbed was Mount Robson, which is the highest peak in the Canadian Rockies. So
Good move.
yeah, it was like, oh well, if we're gonna climb one, we may as well climb a big one.
Smart
Uh,
move.
yeah. So long story short, I was immersed. I was a sales manager at Xerox at the time. I was trying to find development opportunities, pieces of what does it take to get people to perform and achieve at high levels, for
Right.
not only myself, but for my team as well. And so, uh, long story short, we went up this mountain. It took us 4 days to get to the top of it. And
4 days.
yeah, it
Okay.
it
So
was
you were like
a big one. Yeah.
sleeping in sleeping bags,
Oh yeah.
somewhere in between in
Yeah.
the ice.
Yeah, we take a sleeping bag, a thermal rest pad, and then a bivy sack, which is just basically a Gore-Tex bag. And you
Yeah.
get in your
Yeah.
sleeping bag and you stick yourself in the bivy bag, and you sleep on a ledge somewhere, wherever you can, wherever it makes sense. Um, but yeah, we got to the top, and we were elated, and literally 15 minutes from leaving the top, I we were roped up together, and my crampon broke, and I fell, and I dragged Pete down with me, and we tumbled down this mountain a couple hundred meters, bouncing along, ice ridges, etc. And the good news is we survived. We survived the fall, but Pete broke his leg, and it started off a long 3 more days to get off that mountain, which involved a total rescue, and we had to lower Pete down. There was a couple of other guys on the mountain, luckily on the other side,
Wow.
but we had to spend a couple of nights in a snow cave. I dug a snow cave for us, so the four of us huddled in this cave, and it was snowing. It started snowing August 22nd, 1990, and snowing like crazy, like 2 feet of snow in the middle of August. Like, that's how high we were. And we had to dig a cave. We couldn't move, couldn't budge, no visibility. And Pete's got a broken leg. And we ran out of food and fuel on our second night. So no fuel means no water. And we were down to our last bit of food going into the second night. We split an onion. We split an onion 4 ways.
An onion. I'm
Oh my
sure
God,
that onion tasted well.
it tasted pretty good. Yeah, but it didn't last long. But I guess the reason I tell the story is because, of course, we were going into the unknown. We were going into ourselves. We were searching for something that made life spectacular. And the genesis of it was really, it came from, in retrospect, for sure, it came from being in sales. Like, you find a way to get yourself to understand why you're doing this. And anyway, so we into the second night, we were going hypothermia was setting in. We were shaking involuntarily. So that's the beginnings of hypothermia. And yeah, I made a little pact that if I get out of this, I want to do something that matters. I want to do something that helps people. And I so long story short, we got off the mountain, rescued. Uh, Crazy what all just happened to show up. So I guess I was allowed to live. And
It's an amazing story, you know what? And so when I heard that story, I knew this book was going to be, different. And I think it is different. I've read all the comps, all the sales books comps, like I should as a publisher, right? And as your book marketer. And I know this book is it's just different, and it is so much more than what you typically know or read about sales. For example, I also didn't know that Xerox was kind of the gold standard back then. I don't know if it still is, but the gold standard back then for uh, what you call sales culture. I didn't even really fully comprehend what you meant by sales culture. Um, but I also, I really got into it, and I know you already have another book written about sales culture that we don't want to talk about here because we want to focus on Cheating Death, the book that is publishing that is being published in a few weeks. And by the way, I just want to let everybody know, if you want to grab a free copy of this awesome book, you still can. If you go to spireselling.com, you can get a free copy. And as soon as it will publish, so that, like I said, it's a couple of weeks from now. But just kind of on a side tangent, I didn't really grasp the notion of sales culture when you first told me about it, right? And I had to go back and ask you, so what do you mean? I mean, what's the difference to, just company culture? So tell us a little bit about that, about why for you sales culture is such an important, part of
Mhm.
the success of a B2B company.
Yeah, and it is very powerful. Now, to state the obvious, not every company has a perfect sales culture and won't. So you participate
Obviously.
in the culture. It's you and the guys and gals that you're out there with. I wouldn't suggest that sales is a good it. Although it can be a sort of lonely profession, right? You're out there in your patch, you're out there in your territory, but don't do it alone. Don't do this alone. You join up with a community. So it was tough to get a job at Xerox back then. It took 6 months and
Hmm.
7 interviews, and they wanted to know that you wanted this really bad. And I interviewed with many other companies as well. I was lucky enough to get an introduction into Xerox, which in itself was a whole journey. You had to sell them on hiring you. But once in the culture, and this is neat. This is really cool. This is the neat thing about a sales culture. You are around people that do cool things. There
Yeah.
there's there you know
Yeah.
there was a very high drop off rate back then. 85% of new hires didn't make it past 11 months. That was the
Yeah.
stat.
Yeah.
Once you got past that, then you figured out yourself. You go, oh no, this is I'm choosing to do this. I want to do this. So right to today, and I suspect everybody's asking this question today: do I want to be in sales? I hope you're asking that, and you have to answer with a very affirmative, with your own reasons. So a sales culture is a very intriguing place. Not that other departments aren't, right? We love all people in all departments, but personally, the reason I've just stuck with this, I've just blinked and 35 years went by in developing salespeople. Well,
Yeah.
40 years now since I started in,
Yeah.
in sales at Xerox. You blink and it just goes so fast. I love salespeople. I just like being around salespeople is so neat because we do cool things. We
You
do
know,
cool things.
and that reminded me also a little bit of my world when I was in technology and working for big Fortune 500 companies. I realized that you can create a different culture even within a bigger culture, right? So the bigger company culture might be, bureaucratic, and might be toxic, it might be all kinds of things, but you can create your own culture as a team, and you can do so from the bottom even as an individual. And that's what I like about also your story, and what you are, how shall I say, propagating, is that you can own this, and you can, change this on your own, and you can also drive it, whether you're at a manager level, at a you're in the trenches. There's really a lot that can come from your own,
Yeah.
drive, and your energy. One thing that I also found really cool about the book, it doesn't really touch on many of the traditional themes that you might find in a sales book, like storytelling or relationship building, but it touches on some very core um, topics. I remember, for example, curiosity and truth is are two of those topics that come very early on in the book. Tell us a little bit about what you mean by curiosity and truth in your context, in your B2B sales context.
Yeah, well, they're two different things, and yet they work together, right? So, like the sales culture that we've been talking about, um, that's you don't want to leave that as well. It's just me and my team and my company. That's all internal. The culture includes the customer. The culture includes the customer, and so that if you want to be in a state of mind where you want to go see customers, a helpful frame of mind is a curiosity, but more than that, like an absolute a burning desire. I have to know what's behind this door. It's
Yeah,
it's it's
yeah,
going it's looking at every single company and
yeah,
saying, Yes, you can read about them beforehand, and of course you should research a company before you go in,
Yeah.
obviously.
Uh,
But to say, yeah, but what actually goes on in behind here? How do things actually work inside this company? And you will never be bored. And they'll love answering your questions because nobody comes in and pokes their nose in and to your customer's facility and says, "So what actually goes on in here?" Ask that question. So what actually goes on here? That's a lot different than, tell me
yeah.
about your software
Yeah.
process. No, no. What actually goes on here, and how do decisions actually get made, and what are you actually wrestling with? Because ideas in every company, most of them come from the outside,
Yeah.
and
I agree.
decision makers are thirsting, they're
I
dying for
agree.
someone to
Yeah.
ask, what actually goes on in here, because they don't get it from the inside. People are kind of toeing the line, right? So you, as a sales practitioner, have to have this curiosity, and then that goes to what we're into around the world today, right?
Yeah.
8 billion people are now asking themselves, what is the truth? Wait a minute, what's actually going on here? I have so many sources of information, and truth is hard work. As I'm reading the book Nexus by Yuval Harari, which I would strongly recommend anyone read.
That's a great book. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
because
You know,
he
this totally
illustrates it very
resonates
well.
with me because I think that curiosity is just one of the strongest human uh, drivers that people don't they don't cultivate it often, or often it's suppressed from the outside, right? But
Mhm.
curiosity is really one of the core, how shall I say, core energies that make humankind develop and become, better and more innovative. It all starts with curiosity, with going out there and trying to figure something out, right?
Mhm.
And I just found that very powerful how you related that to, the core of a B2B salesperson. I just think it's really it. So I felt that your book really energizes and it inspires, right? It gives you like an internal um boost, right?
Mhm.
To reconnect with that profession. So that's something I found very, very convincing. And and then and then of course I also I also loved the stories that you had in the book because I didn't, and it never really occurred to me. You mentioned this earlier in the conversation that innovation usually comes from the outside, right? It comes
Often.
from someone leaving his tribe and seeking others to share information or show their ideas or their goods. That's how it happens, right? Innovation always happens in the intersection of communities and of
Mhm.
companies and of
It's
ideas.
easier. It's
and
it's easier. It
and
doesn't cost you anything
yeah.
to get
And so
information
one of
from
the
the outside.
stories that just found so captivating in the book is this story about you had a client, right, that you did Salesforce development for, and this client, they sold grain storage solutions to farmers, which sounds very basic, right, and very
Yeah,
simple,
they actually
but
bought
it
green.
actually changed the world. It was amazing what came from that solution and how it was. So tell us a little bit about that. I just found that such a incredible story.
Yeah, that's a fascinating company. I mean, this goes back a while, but it was Cargill Ag Horizons, and Cargill is I think, the second biggest privately owned company in North America. They're huge, still owned, family owned, amazing. So
Oh, wow,
they
I did not know that.
yeah,
Yeah,
so they're being not shareholder driven. They can think long term, and they invest
yeah,
long term.
yeah.
So picture a farmer. He has to sell his grain every year, uh, and up up till when all this started. This was 15 years ago, 18 years ago. a farmer literally would they'd harvest their grain. Some would put it in bins, but most of them would harvest their grain, get it off the field. Soybeans and corn, for the most part in North America, are two of the major big crops, especially coming out of the States. They take their grain to right off the field, put it in trucks, take it right to the local elevator, and get the worst price imaginable. Because all the farmers are taking their
Right.
grain on exactly the same day. You'd literally
Yes.
you'd go to these 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 terminals, right, and they're right across the country. You can see them when you
Yeah.
drive across, right?
Yeah.
Little towns
The big
are
silos. Yeah.
they are all built around these little these grain facilities, and literally you'd see lineups of hundreds of trucks during harvest trying to dump their
Mhm.
grain, get the worst price, go home and complain about how poor farmers are. And so anyway, the Cargill Ag Horizons, Dan Dye was the president at the time, and Dan was awesome. He had an idea. He said, you know, we're gonna change the way farmers market their grain. So they came up with forward contracting structures that salespeople had to go out and explain to farmers how they're not going to take their grain to the terminal during the middle of October anymore. They're going to sell their grain
Right.
all year round. So you can imagine you got to really twist your head around that if you're a farmer and never done this before. You got to start learning about shorts and puts and calls and markets and hedging and all kinds of stuff like that. And Cargill had to make this easy. Well, that took a sales force. In the US, there was between outside, inside sales managers, there's about 450 people had to be trained. And then in Canada, there was another
That's a
100,
large,
140,
that's a large
150.
team.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so that took some time. But think about the power of the salesperson. And we had to bring about this mindset. You're just because you tell a farmer how this works and what it is, doesn't mean they're going to do it. You have to start with that farmer and their individual circumstances. And every single farm is wildly different. Some of them have, you know, grandpa's running the farm really, he's making all the decisions. We found that 50% of grain marketing decisions were made by the farmer's wife. You better
Mhm.
start talking with her. Well, that was different only 15 years ago. Holy smokes. No, you got to ask questions and you got to be curious and you better listen and you better find out what's actually going on every single farm and what's the succession plan and what are they going to do with the money and are they growing? Um, do they actually have an accountant? Like you got to find out a lot of stuff. Cargill salespeople, within a very short period of time, and I mean like within 2-3 years, they changed the way farmers market their grain, and it exploded. It went huge, viral, and that then expanded across the world. Now there was it wasn't 100% of farmers all at once, but it was like from 0.5% to 2% to 5% to 20% to 50%, and all of a sudden farmers are like, okay, they're business people. They are in charge of their own profits if they learn to market grain properly with the help of a sales practitioner. And a sales practitioner's job was to find and fix problems. They had to become highly trained. They had to become highly trained at creating frameworks that reveal how a farmer could be doing this differently. That's a conversation. That's many conversations. That's not just show up and drop a brochure. That's a relationship. You change the way a farmer can hang on to his farm and market his or her grain differently, and all of a sudden profitability changes when all of a sudden you're getting
Right.
20%, 40%,
Right.
10% more on very originally slim margins on grain, and they are slim. All of a sudden that farmer, he or she became very very profitable, but it all hinged on the sales practitioner.
And what fascinated me was that these sales practitioners, with the innovation that they brought to these farmers, they didn't just change the lives of these farmers and their communities. They actually changed the worldwide supply chain and transportation
Oh,
um,
everything.
system, because the world was no longer overwhelmed every year at harvest time with these millions of tons of grain that had to be shipped. It was just it was unchoked, right, and smoothed out. That was a massive, you know, a massive improvement just for economy, for trade, for society, that
Yeah.
came from this one innovation that salespeople were spreading in this industry.
Well, it
I
freed up freight space. You picture a ship. You picture ships that carry shipping containers. Well, imagine what happens if during the month of October, that's getting monopolized by the agriculture industry. Well,
Yeah,
everybody, anybody else who wants to ship something is, back of the line. It was very interesting. So all of a sudden, yeah, it evened out ports. It changed the landscape of small towns, small farming towns. Um, it it changed the landscape. Like it was quite something. So
yeah,
you know,
and that really impressed me, right? That's something that just it appears it sounds relatively, simple. Okay, so don't sell your grain when you harvest it, put it in a container and sell it later when the price is higher. So that
yeah,
sounds relatively simple, but the complexity, but B, also the improvement that brought to the industry and to transportation and supply, it's staggering, right?
yeah,
So the impact that you can have as someone who sells new ideas to businesses, right? It
right.
goes way beyond just that sale and the money you're making there, or the commission, or it also goes way beyond just the profit that organization, that company is
Very much
making,
so.
right?
So Martin, so the interesting thing about this too, we were talking about truth, and this is now under a microscope for everyone, because you have to ask yourself, one, do I want to be a salesperson? And companies have to ask themselves, do we need salespeople? Because I have any information I want at the tip of my finger,
Right,
and it's obviously everybody, but it's not. Is it true? Is it correct? I need a sales practitioner to come into my business and say, okay, help me navigate the complexity of all this. Be, because at Cargill, the sales practitioner had to compete against the story that the farmers were telling themselves. And the farmers hang around in a coffee shop and they create the story. And to be a farmer, you have to be very stubborn. And once you're stubborn, you don't change your story easily. So the sales practitioner had to establish truth. So I mean that's the Cargill story. We had to do the same at Xerox. It was all about your circumstances could be better, Mr. Customer. Oh yeah, prove it. All right, let's gather evidence. Let's create evidence to make sure we have the story right. We'll both do it together, and we'll establish the methodology to give us the evidence that tells us that you could have a better circumstance. Now that's a body of work, and that takes more than just presentation skills or negotiation skills. No, that's sales 101. You have to become a practitioner, which in definition of a practitioner is someone who's highly trained. They have a a specific expertise, as does every salesperson that works for a company. You are an expert in your product area. You know where your
right,
product fits and where it doesn't, and what
right,
circumstances tell you that your product fits.
right.
And you and your customer need to have that conversation. Let's
I
prove it.
so that's the what I what opened my eyes was is uh, that in this new B2B sales world, um, you're actually you need to kind of, assert your authority and tell the customer things that they probably don't even know, right? And
Oh, for
show
sure.
them problems that they're not even aware of, right? And that's
Hmm.
very different from the old notion that we have of salespeople, honing their pitch or telling stories or finding, whining and dining the customer to build a relationship, and it's just it is almost the total opposite, right? It's
It
almost
is.
like
Yeah.
imagining walking into the doctor's office and the doctor's pitching things to me or offering me a glass of wine or trying
Yeah.
to build a
Right.
relationship or whatever, right? That actually doesn't, it would never make any sense.
No.
And I realized, that it's actually the same in B2B, right? It doesn't make any sense to pitch a solution to a company that doesn't fix a problem,
Right.
or not to focus on the biggest problem in the first place.
Hmm.
Versus, so that was really, to me, that was just an aha moment. I think for a lot of salespeople out there, for a lot of people in the B2B world, that might not be news, but I think the way you approach to how to become such a sales practitioner, I can say from all the books that I've read and the materials that I've looked at, that your approach is really it's very different, because it starts inside. I
Hmm.
coined it, the inner game of sales, because I enjoyed the inner game of tennis. It's just a
Hmm.
book that's very well known in the motivation world. And I think that makes your approach just a very extraordinary approach, and very applicable to and really everybody who wants to thrive in this profession. And I think it is kind of like, it to me, it feels almost like what happened in medicine 100 years ago, when there was a transformation from people who did all kinds of strange things, healers and
Hmm.
magicians, towards scientific, uh, expert and trained doctors, right?
Right.
That was a real game change in the medical world. So I'm kind of learning from you that the same is happening in the B2B world, where salespeople are becoming highly trained experts that have that are able to tell me what I actually need, versus just uh ask me what I want, so to speak, right? And
Yeah.
that's a huge
Mm.
shift.
Yeah, it is. And so we go personal, right? To answer these deep questions. To understand the role, if of yourself, if you say, okay, what do I want to become as a sales practitioner? If we go forward, way way forward, 100 years from now, are salespeople going to be around? 50 years from now, 20 years from now, are salespeople going to be around? Do you need a salesperson? Well, we picture the value of someone who comes in to our lives, right? You mentioned a doctor. The only reason I go to a doctor is because I don't understand this machine. I can't see it. I can't see what's inside it. I own it. It's mine, but I can't see what's going on in here. The doctor comes in, they look inside at something that I can't see. They have the expertise and to know the tools to look inside. So uh,
Right.
I'm talking about this analogy to a doctor or radiologist or something like that. They have the expertise to do this. Do we need salespeople? Well, how much would you benefit if somebody came into not only your business but came into your life in various aspects of it, in the aspects that you would like to improve. Why would you not have somebody come in
Yeah.
and their specific role is to say, let me watch
Yeah.
you at work, Rob, the way you raise your kids, the way you manage your appliances in your house, whatever, right? Let me look at it. I'll study it and I'll let you know what could be done better. God, I need all the help I can get. Like, why wouldn't you accept that into your life? And decision makers in companies, strong ones, they know this. They love having a strong practitioner come in. That's they love surrounding themselves with the right salespeople, not the people who just, as they say, show up and throw up. We don't want
Yeah.
any of that. That's
Yeah.
enough of that. This cheesy salesperson stuff, that's got to go now. That's over,
Yeah. You
right?
know what? And that it becomes clear to me now, as a buyer, I never thought like that, right? Because as a buyer, salespeople would always line up in front of my office and try to get an appointment, or, charm the assistant to get on my calendar and all kinds. And I never thought about the fact that it's actually like, when it comes to, sports, if I want to become good at something, I get a coach, right? If I
Absolutely.
want to, if I need help in life and in my career, I get a therapist, I get a coach. Obviously, I will have someone who takes care of my, health. I'll even get a nutritional expert. I get all kinds of experts,
Sure.
but as an executive dealing with incredibly complex problems in my business, you know, I didn't, I didn't, how shall I say, value the experts that were outside my door waiting to help me, and that's something that I think really needs to change. And I like your approach that it in the end, it's the sales practitioner who has to step up and assert, themselves to the customer, saying, hey, I'm an expert, I
Hmm.
can help you,
Yeah.
this is what I'm going to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like, can we create meaningful change in the world? So now, can I ask you a question, Mark? Because
Sure.
like you've helped people, like you're the expert. You know how to take a body of work, not just books, but like myself, right? It's I want to do the whole thing. There's books that explain, what we're doing for a sales practitioner, but courses and messaging and online social media programs. We're trying to help salespeople in many various ways. So along comes you. How do you choose? How do you go about choosing the projects that you want to take on? Because everybody's coming after you, trying to get you to publish their books and
So
help
yeah,
launch their
so
businesses. How do you choose? What's the
that's a good
criteria?
That's a good question. No, obviously, I love to answer this question, right? So yes, I get a lot of people who come to me and say, "I want to write a book and I want it to be a bestseller," right? And guess what? That's impossible. Every year, there's millions of books that get published in the United States alone. Um, on average, books sell less than 100 copies because there's just so many. There's the market is just being flooded by books, and the so it really, for me, the important thing is the why. So why are you selling
Hmm.
why are you writing a book? If you're writing a book because you want to be a bestseller, because you want to have that badge and you have that ego, um, I'm not really interested. I'm also not interested because I can't make it happen, right? That's not something I can do. I can only make a book successful if there is a purpose, if there is a strong purpose behind that book. Because if there is a purpose, there'll be a platform, there'll be a way to reach readers, to market it, and the book will be successful if if you do the right things that you need to do nowadays uh, to get traction, to get audience, to get digital presence, etc. But it's all about the purpose. It's all about what drives. What is the driver behind it? And that's how, I choose my authors, and that's why we, immediately, connected, is because I could sense that this was not about you wanting to become a bestseller or wanting to tell your friends, hey, I'm an author, I wrote a book. It's much bigger than that, right? It's much more meaningful. There is a strong purpose behind why you were writing a book, and why my other author clients are writing their books. And that's really how that's, to me, it becomes very clear. It even says so on my website. If your passion can instill my excitement because I really believe in your cause, then I'm the right publisher for you. Then I can move mountains and make it happen. And that's really, for me, that's what makes me decide to pick one project over another. And if I do pick a project, I put all my passion and all my energy into it. So I don't have a lot of clients, but those that I have, those books will make a difference, and they will go far.
So Martin, what are you experiencing with AI? Um, and the reason I ask is, we have this existential issue now, right? We have AI that's going to replace a lot of people's lives and give us, if it's going to do all our work for us, not all of it, obviously, but all of a sudden, if people find themselves either on one end of the scale, outright out of a job, or bored because so much is being done by AI, and people ask the question, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to get satisfaction and joy? How are you seeing this from authors and business owners that are trying to
Yeah.
launch a message? How much is AI included in the message that people are trying to launch?
That's a good question. And I wanted to ask you that question too, so I'll do that, afterwards. So first of all, what I'm just experiencing directly in my work, I work out of a very creative co-working space here in Pasadena, California, so in the Los Angeles area. And I can I interact a lot, communicate a lot with people that are either in creative jobs or in tech jobs, that are producing, that are writing, that are designing, and I just can see this explosion happening around me. But what I'm seeing is that everybody's work is getting, how shall I say, better quality,
Mhm,
including myself, right?
mhm,
I can do things faster and better that I just wouldn't have been able to do a year ago or 2 years ago. And I can see people working with me and next to me doing things faster and better. So I think overall, the impact that AI is having on my business and the people that I work with, but I think is going to have on the economy overall, is our productivity is gonna skyrocket. So there will be another momentum of growth, that like we had in the 90s and early 2000s with the internet. I can already see that, and I can feel that, and all around me directly. And so I am not, so my first, how shall I say, feeling and reaction is not, oh my God, the robots are going to replace the humans. My first reaction is, well, people using AI are going to replace people who don't use AI, right? That's
mhm.
what's going to
Yeah.
happen very quickly in some spaces. And but I don't think that's scary because it's not hard to use AI. It's
Right.
just like something you have to be open to and
Sure.
curious about. It's about curiosity.
Yeah.
It always is about curiosity. If you are like, oh, what is this? How do I use it? How do I figure out? You go and ask someone. You take some training. You're gonna figure it out really fast. And once you do that, you're gonna see, wow, I can do things faster. I can do things smarter. I can do much more than I thought. So it's going to be, I think, incredibly empowering.
Hmm.
I'm sure there's also other things that are going to happen that I just don't understand yet, and I think nobody really knows what all the changes are going to be. It's going to change our society, I think,
For sure. Yeah.
dramatically, and we just don't know.
Mm.
But the first, like I said, the first feeling that I got was just, wow, this is cool. This is going to help us, and
Mhm.
this is going to help, also society overall. But I also was kind of, I know you have a chapter on this in the book, so I wanted to ask you this specifically: is why do you believe that AI would or would not, replace salespersons? That you have that,
Mhm.
you have that question in your book.
Yeah.
So what's your take? How do you see this?
Yeah, well, it's in our face, and I think we have to make a serious decision. I mean, I made a serious decision 2 years ago. Uh, the salesperson who could be replaced, if there's a salesperson of the past who's quite simply just an information provider, if they just purely do information transfer, that can be done. You don't even need AI for that. You can just use Siri. um, you
Yeah,
know so that so many of those salespeople have either disappeared, or all you have to do is look at companies. And I worked with companies over years, and I said, so you're going to increase the number of salespeople you have, right? Well, salespeople are expensive. The cost of sales is
yeah,
huge, so the return on investment, they have to hit their numbers. So uh, companies have not increased the size of their sales force significantly. As a matter of fact, they've reduced it. So there's so many dropping off that we now have to ask the question, as a salesperson, as a sales practitioner, what's your worth? And that's one of the chapters in the book, in Cheating Death. I ask the question, what's your worth? And what am I worth? Well, if you find and fix a problem in my life, you are worth a fortune. I can't pay you enough. You know,
totally,
you are
totally.
so valuable. And so where does AI fit into all this? The reason I'm interested in this, and I'm going to keep studying this and gather data on it and keep talking to it and keep it in the training, is this a meaningful career to get into? Well, if you want to do sales the old way, no, it's not. We use AI. If I'm a decision maker, I can go into ChatGPT and I can say, how should I solve this? Give me 3 ideas on how to solve this. Give me the 3 resources, and by the way, line up the appointments for me. I could do that easily. But when it's complicated, when it's complex, when I need somebody to come in, right? All of a sudden, as a sales practitioner, you find and fix a problem. And if you think about the difference between a leader and someone who's not a leader, fixing problems gets paid less than finding problems. Finding problems,
That's
if
true.
you're a problem finder, that's the upper echelon. You look forward. This year's sales are done. This year's productivity and numbers and operations, it's done. I have to make sure I can pay the staff's salary 2 years from now, 5 years from now. I have to do the same in my company. I want my people making a really good income. I have to be 3 years ahead, right? So somebody who helps me do that, their worth is immense. It's immense. You, as a
Yeah,
sales practitioner, you want to get into meaningful work. A sales practitioner, there's lots of great jobs out there, but you can never go wrong being in the profession of finding and fixing problems, studying B2B, study customer circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
And
it's it's
you
fun.
know, I think that that's actually a very good, how shall I say? It's a very good example of the advantage that you can gain if you know how to use AI. Namely, AI only really helps you if you're an expert in the first place. If you know nothing about a subject
Yeah,
and you try to solve a problem with AI, it's just going to get worse. I mean, it's
yeah,
that's going to go off the rails really badly. So
yeah,
you actually have to be an expert, right? And if you are a sales practitioner and you know something about 20 different companies in the industry, you know the problem from 20 different perspectives or 20 different kinds of problems, you're going to be able to use a tool like AI with so much more power than anybody in these individual organizations would, because their experience and exposure is limited, right? So to me, it's just a multiplier of a skill that's already there, that's
sure.
of a capability that's already there.
Yeah,
And that's going to also, it's also going to help sales practitioner make
yeah,
them so
very
much more
much so.
powerful.
Yeah, and it's you immerse yourself in it, right? Um, and the word "and" is very powerful, right? Do I invest in my own development or my customers' development or helping my company? Do all three. It's win-win-win. Always start with your own curiosity, your own development, your own abilities, your own unique uh, perspective and vantage point. And now you start to being in the right frame of mind. Declare your role with your customer, right? I'm determined. My job is to come in here and find something that is going to be meaningful and helpful to you with proof and evidence, or you don't need me.
Right.
Well, what do you got? Show me what you got. I can't present or pitch anything yet. Obviously, we have a product area, but I have to understand your circumstances first, Mr. Customer. So, you know, as sales practitioners, like, become good. To your point, Martin, right? You do want to become very good at what you do, which is a lot of fun. And I learned that on the mountain, right? You do it because you want to. Every footstep counts. You don't want to slip. And when
Yeah.
you
And
do, you get up high in this beautiful, glorious place.
uh, yeah, I'm getting a lot of ideas on more books and also more courses.
Yeah, yeah,
So
very much so.
we need to have a future looking session also someday where we're going to talk about the next book and the next course. I mean,
Looking forward to it.
I know that you are already publishing, I think, 6 different courses, right? The one is going live actually in beta these weeks. There's
Right.
another one that's going live in 4 weeks. And I just got, right now with our conversation, I got the idea that we should do something around AI, but there's so much, there's just so much in the future
Yeah,
that
we have so much work to do.
we can cover that in a different conversation.
Yeah,
You should tell us a little bit about the courses that you're building. Maybe we can
sure.
close it with that.
Sure. Yeah, there's actually 5 courses are coming live this year. There's going to be 3 for sales practitioners. They build on each other. Um, it's a series of fundamentals to begin with, um, sales practitioner fundamentals, and then
Right.
and then we build uh, on those skills. So 3 for sales practitioners, and there's actually 2 courses we've built for sales managers because we want that cohesiveness, right? A good practitioner, like you said before, Martin, I thought you put it very well. You get, if you're learning to play tennis, you get yourself a coach. Well, get yourself many, right? Surround yourself with it
Yep.
with a team. So
Yeah.
yeah, we have a couple of courses for sales managers, and then 3 for practitioners. There's going to be more coming next year. We're building already, and anything to help. you as sales practitioners out there. Don't go through this alone. We're with you. Surround yourself with your team, with your cohorts. Do cool things and be around other sales practitioners that are trying to do the same. And you're going to prop each other up. And we love you. Keep changing the world. You're the ones who change the world. You're the ones who go into customers and get them to wait a minute. Till this gal came, we didn't think that way. Like, don't be afraid. You're helping them.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, go to spireselling.com, grab a free copy of Cheating Death, Rob's book that we're publishing in a couple of weeks, as long as you can. And thank you for inviting me to your show.
Yeah,
I think
thank you,
this was
Marty.
great.
Yeah, this has been great. We'll do it again.
Yep,
Okay.
we
And
should.
thanks everybody for watching. This is, we really appreciate it and look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thanks, Rob.
Take care.
You too.
Okay. So we're off. Wow, that went fast. Holy cow.